Hi, hello, and if you're new to the channel, welcome, and if you've been here before, welcome back. Now in this video, what I'm going to do is bring together all that I've learnt about polishing the paintwork on the outside of my narrowboat. And I've picked up this sort of knowledge through watching other videos and through trial and error on my own narrowboat. So if you're thinking of polishing and waxing your narrowboat, you might find this video useful. As I said, it's very much a trial and error process. I'm not saying this is the right process for everyone, but it's the approach that I have found that has worked best for me and produced what I think are fairly good results. So anyway, let's have a look at the process that I've come up with. Now, if you watched my earlier video on polishing my narrowboat, there's a link to it in the description, and there should also be one on the screen now. You'll know that I polished the narrowboat last autumn. I used an approach where I applied compound, then I applied polish, and then 2 coats of wax. And even after the winter, the boat still looks pretty good. There's a nice shine to it. The colours are quite crisp, and I'm very pleased with the way it still looks and the way it came out. And during this process, I learned a lot about how to polish a narrowboat, and I now want to apply that to the right-hand side, the starboard side of the boat. Now, the right-hand side of my narrowboat, the starboard side, doesn't look too bad from a distance. If you walk along, it still seems to have quite a nice shine to it. And the problem is when you get close up. However, when you look at the paintwork close up, you can start to see some scratches and blemishes. They seem to be particularly prominent on the dark grey paintwork. You can see those sort of black lines along it. And clearly the paintwork needs a good clean and a polish. Here's a closer look at the dark grey paintwork. As you can see, it really has this sort of weird black smudging on it. No idea what's caused that. So this is the process I have come up with. I start by giving the side of the boat a good wash down with a good quality detergent. This is to remove any loose grit or dirt from the side of the boat. When I'm working on the boat, I have it loosely moored so I can push it away from the side of the pontoon. I also have a rope going over to a ring on another pontoon to help pull it away from the side. And as you can see, as I'm washing the boat, the shine starts to come back. Even taking off the winter grime seems to sort of perk up the paintwork. However, those dark marks I showed you earlier on the dark grey, they will still be there, as will a number of the small scratches and blemishes on the side of the boat. Next, I rinse down the boat with cold running water. And this job is a lot easier now because back in the autumn we weren't allowed to use a hose pipe, so it meant frequent changes of water in the bucket. But now, just have the hose running and give it a good rinse down, get all the soap off and get any of the last sort of grime and dust off the paintwork. Having washed down the paintwork with soapy water and then giving it a good rinse and allowing it to dry, overall the paintwork doesn't look too bad. However, if you look closely at it, you can still see some very dull spots and you can see small scratches, and what's particularly noticeable are the sort of dark black grey smudges on the dark grey background. So clearly I need to do something about this. I need to give it a good polish and then apply a good quality wax to it to help protect the paintwork. But as I say, after a wash, it doesn't look too bad. Okay, so the first thing I do is apply compound to the side of the boat. There is full information on the compound I'm using and any of the tools in the description below. I give the compound a good shake and then put a series of 5 or 6 dots onto the pad. Giving the compound a good shake is important because you want to get all the sort of fine abrasive in the compound back into solution. So I dab the compound around the area that I'm going to work. I typically do a 2 foot by 2 foot section, and I just slowly work backwards and forwards across the section with the hand polisher. I've got the hand polisher set on its lowest speed. So I just keep working backwards and forwards, and once I've gone backwards and forwards, I then will go up and down across the particular patch that I'm doing. As I said, I do a 2 foot by 2 foot square at a time. If I try to do any more than that, I find that the compound dries quite quickly, even on a fairly cool day. This is in the spring. It's not particularly hot. I've got a hat on, and yet this compound will dry quite quickly. So I keep working it backwards and forwards until I get to a point where I think I can't push it any further because it's either too spread out or it's beginning to dry. So up and down, slowly does it, no rush. I then remove the compound by polishing up and down with a microfiber cloth. I go up and down and across, and I found that a microfiber cloth will do somewhere in the region of 2 to 4 patches of this sort of size. If I try to do any more, I don't get all the compound removed. Sometimes I wonder if the compound is actually working, but here you can clearly see it on this light grey panel. The top part of it I've treated with compound, and the lower sort of dull grey I haven't yet treated. So it is working. I can see colour coming off the boat as well onto the wool pad. It's great when you come to do the last couple of 2 foot areas. I keep the same method going along the boat. I'm using this synthetic wool pad, 5 or 6 spots of the compound onto the pad, dab it around, and then just work it backwards and forwards, up and down across the paintwork. And then remove the compound with a microfiber cloth. So that's the side of the boat treated with compound, and at this stage it doesn't look too great. There's still sort of these light grey areas. There's some shiny areas and some dull areas, and this used to really worry me, but I've learned that I can ignore it at this stage. I don't really need to be concerned about this, and in fact what it is compound that has not been removed with the microfiber cloths. The last thing I do is rub along the coach lines with compound. This is just to take off any of the paint that may have bled over during compounding from the nearby darker areas. If I look closely at the areas of dark grey that had those black marks on them, you can see that the black marks have been removed by the compound. Next up, I polish the Narrowboat, and you can find a full description of the polish that I use in the description below. Now, I apply the polish using a slightly stiff foam pad on the polisher. You can buy different stiffnesses of foam for the polisher. The stiffest foam is for putting on compound, but I find that the lambswool, the synthetic lambswool pad, works best there. I then move to a sort of moderate stiff foam for putting on the polish, and then finish off on a very sort of soft foam for adding the wax. Again, what I do is I put 5 or 6 splodges of the polish on the pad, and again I work to a 2 foot by 2 foot area, working backwards and forwards across the paintwork, up and down, until I've spread that polish around. Now again, I've got to be very careful here because I don't want the polish to dry on the boat. So I need a sort of cool day. Yes, it's sunny today, but I'm in the shade here. So I'm applying the polish up and down, and then once I've spread it around and it's getting close to drying, I remove it with a microfiber cloth. Again, I've found that one microfiber cloth will do sort of between 2 and 4 sort of 2 foot areas on the boat. Now, something I did try on the other side of the boat was giving it a wash between the compound and the polishing stage. And I found that when I gave it a wash, I got a very fine sort of particulate matter off the side of the boat. I guess that's the abrasive that's in the compound. However, on this side of the boat, I decided not to give it a wash between compound and polish and just to go straight to polish. Now, you'd think that the microfiber cloth would take off all the compound, but in fact it doesn't. It does leave compound behind. And the same is true with the polish. The polishing stage does leave polish behind. It leaves a sort of fine abrasive behind. And I found that the key thing here to do is to give the boat a good wash between the polishing and the waxing stage to get that fine material off, and you get a much better finish and a much more consistent finish. Here you can see a difference between where I've just applied compound and where I've applied compound and polish. You can see a distinct line down the side of the boat here. To the left of that line has had compound and polish, and to the right has only had compound on it. And again, you can see the difference here. To the left of the line has had compound and polish, and to the right has only had compound. Okay, so here you can see the boat after I have used compound and polish. The dark grey area has lost all those horrible black marks. The light grey area, there's still some sort of smudging going on. And what this actually is dried compound and polish. And that will come off when I give the side of the boat a good wash. It will remove that sort of light grey that you can see there. Here's a closer look at the areas that don't appear to have been polished. They have been polished, but what you can see there, that sort of haze, is in fact the abrasive from the polish and the compound, and that will be removed with a good wash. It is quite disappointing that despite using numerous microfiber cloths and also changing microfiber cloths after 2 to 4 sections, that you still get this sort of haze of compound and polish on the side of the boat. But as I said, a good wash and it will be removed. Okay, so after applying compound and polish, I give the boat a good wash down with warm soapy water, followed by a good rinse. And it's surprising just how much abrasive comes off the side of the boat. And this is despite having used numerous microfiber cloths to remove the compound and polish as I was going along. In fact, this is the water after washing the boat. That white that you can see in the water there is the abrasive from the compound and the polish. And this is the result of the wash. I use a detergent that has got no wax in it because I want to apply wax. As you can see, there are still some areas that have sort of got that slight sort of cloudiness, that sort of dullness to the paintwork, but those will come out when you apply the wax. Overall, very pleased with the sort of level of finish that I've got here. Right, and so on to the final stage, applying the wax. Again, I give it a good shake, and there is a full description of the wax that I used in the description below. For applying the wax, I use a very, very soft foam pad. I make a cross on it and I give a few dots of the wax. Again, I dab it on the area that I'm doing, and I try to work in a 2 foot by 2 foot area. As with the compound and the polish, I work backwards and forwards across the area and then up and down to apply the wax. Again, it's critical here that you don't let the wax dry out. So I have a microfiber cloth on hand, and as soon as I've finished going up and down the paintwork, I will remove the wax using the microfiber cloth. So just take my time. Slowly does it up and down, working that wax into the paintwork. And then polish the paintwork with a microfiber cloth, again using 1 microfiber cloth for every 3 to 4 panels on the side of the boat. And as you can see, it gives a cracking good finish. The shine there is fantastic. And here you can see an area that has been waxed and an area that has not been waxed. Yes, there is that white haze from the compound and the polish, but the wax really helps the colour pop through. And here's the finished side of the boat. Really pleased with how it came out. It's got a good consistent colour. There are some areas that are still a little bit dull, but I think that's because the paintwork is particularly tired. But the overall effect is very, very good indeed. I've got rid of all those sort of dark lines that were on the dark grey background. There's a nice, fairly consistent and even shine to the boat, and I think it looks very good indeed. Interestingly, in this shot, you can see at the top of the gunnels that white stuff. That is the white abrasive from the compound and the polish that I washed off the side of the boat. So, very pleased with that result. And here's a shot of the side of the boat from a distance, and it looks very good. Very, very pleased with the outcome. A few areas, as I say, that are still a little bit dull, but I think that's just because the paintwork is getting really tired and old. And what this shot nicely shows is the abrasive that I washed off the boat. If you look along the gunnel and sort of down the side of the boat, that white streak that you can see, that white streaking there, is the abrasive that came off the side of the boat. So, as I say, I think this approach works for me. I'm very pleased with the result and the outcome that I get. Well, that's what I've come up with. Basically, apply the compound in the way that I showed you, in sort of 2-foot squares, and sort of work it backwards and forwards and up and down, and then remove it with a microfiber cloth. I was doing sort of 2-foot squares on the side of the boat, and I would change the microfiber cloth about every 4 to 6 squares during that process. However, what I found was even with changing microfiber cloths, I wasn't getting enough of that compound off the side of the boat. So that's when I adopted the sort of washing down between the compound stage and the polishing stage. And as you saw, the water comes off there really sort of cloudy. So it just shows that the polishing or the removal of compound with a microfiber cloth really isn't getting all of that compound off the side of the boat. I then let the boat dry after I'd rinsed it with water. I dried it, and then I applied the polish. And again, with the polish, I found that it was a good idea to wash the boat down after the polish, because even though again I was doing 2-foot squares and I would do sort of 6 to 8 of those squares with one microfiber cloth, I wasn't getting all the polish off, and rinsing it really helped remove that polish, the mild abrasive that was in the polish. And then finally, I applied the wax, and I found that 2 coats of wax worked best for me. Again, working in those 2-foot squares. So that's the approach that I came up with. And for me, it's worked very, very well indeed. I've got a nice finish on the boat, and I'm very happy with the result that I've got. Anyway, if you found this video interesting, informative, or entertaining, please don't forget to give it a big like, a big thumbs up, and also click that hype button, because it really, really helps. And if you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing. Anyway, thanks for watching for this long. On the screen now, you'll see a QR code, and if you scan that or click the link in the description, that'll take you through to a free newsletter about the grey wagtail. I only really use that newsletter to send out notifications about a new video coming out. I don't spam your inbox. Anyway, it's free. So anyway, again, thanks for watching for this long. Bye for now.